Games based on movies and TV shows are usually written off as cash grabs, and most of the time, that is correct. They end up being really terrible, but there have been some actually pretty good TV show games over the years, some of which I'm willing to bet you never actually played or even heard of. Welcome to ChaosGaming, everybody. Do me a favor, become part of this team. Subscribe with your notifications on, follow the page, and today, we're going to be looking over some of the best games based on TV shows, and you let me know which of these you actually played and which ones you said, hey, I didn't even know this was a thing. Drop a like, and let's start off with LEGO Star Wars 3: The Clone Wars. Now, the first two LEGO Star Wars games were based on the prequel trilogy and the original trilogy, respectively. When it came time for the third, though, the developers were in luck because the Clone Wars TV show was popping off. LEGO Star Wars 3 takes the gameplay of the first two titles, but puts it in the Clone Wars universe. It followed the events of the Clone Wars movie and various scenes from the first two seasons of the show. The gameplay is about what you'd expect from a LEGO game, but that's not a bad thing. If it's not broke, don't fix it, right? Plus, LEGO Star Wars 3 looks surprisingly beautiful and graphically it holds up today. Now, many critics dislike the game due to the similarities to the previous LEGO Star Wars games, but fans loved it. And how can you hate on LEGO games? Seriously. Next up, Fairly Odd Parents Breaking the Rules with a Z. This was back in the golden age of Nickelodeon, and I know a ton of you probably remember this game. Breaking the Rules was a 3D action platformer developed by Blitz Games, published in 2003 by THQ. The game follows an original story where Timmy wishes the fairy world had no rules, at which point Cosmo destroys the sacred fairy rulebook, but then the gang realizes what they've done and set out on an adventure to track down all the missing pages in the book before total chaos ensues, no pun intended. Just about all the show's voice actors return to bring the game to life, and while the gameplay, it's pretty standard for an early 2000s action platformer, the level design and the art style was pretty cool. Nickelodeon released a lot of games during the PS2 and GameCube era, but most fans agree this one was upper tier. Next up is one I have not played, but I think I will. Game of Thrones 2014. Now, there have been a handful of games based on Game of Thrones, so it's important to make that distinction. I'm talking about the 2014 game developed by none other than Telltale Games themselves, who brought the universe to life in their signature episodic choose-your-own-adventure style. The story focused on House Forrester, and it mostly follows the events of Season 3 through 5 of the show, although you can obviously make your own decisions and greatly alter the way things actually turned out. Plus, many of the TV show actors return to voice their characters, which makes it even more memorable. Telltale's Game of Thrones is often forgotten by fans of the studio as it was released right after Walking Dead Season 2 and Tales from Borderlands, which, unfortunately, they stole the spotlight. But if you're a fan of Telltale Games and a fan of Game of Thrones, go check it out. At number 7 today is Reigns' Game of Thrones. Yeah, let's talk about one more Game of Thrones game. One more. It was a good one, based on the universe. Reigns is a strategy game developed by Nereal and published by Devolver Digital in late 2018. Now, due to it being released during the downfall of the show, this one flew under the radar for a lot of people, but it was actually really good and arguably the best Game of Thrones game ever released. Now, you start the game off as Daenerys, and then you have to make a ton of choices to keep your kingdom in order. You progress through the game, you unlock other characters, you rule over their kingdoms, each with a new character, having their own unique set of challenges that further their own story. It was deep. It was simple, but it was deep. It helped expand the universe a bit and gives you a little bit of insight as to how each of these characters would rule over their land. Are you guys ready for the next Game of Thrones, the prequel series? It's coming. It's coming. House of Targaryen, I do believe. Now, Buffy the Vampire Slayer, Chaos Bleeds. No pun intended again. Any Buffy fans in the house? Raise your hand. There was actually quite a few video games based on Buffy, and most of them were pretty crappy, but Chaos Bleeds was actually solid. Released in 2003, it was a hybrid of beat 'em up and survival horror developed by Eurocom and released on the GameCube, the PS2, and the original Xbox. The story? Set during the 5th season of the show, which I have no clue what that was, but it takes a lot of creative liberties for the sake of getting all the fights going, which is understandable for a video game. Now, the graphics, little behind for the times. Gameplay, though, it was actually pretty good, and it had a fantastic atmosphere. Plus, you can play as a variety of characters from the show, not just Buffy. Chaos Bleeds is surprisingly solid for a Buffy game, and if you're a fan of the series, go check it out. After all, good Buffy games, well, they're pretty hard to come by. Next up, TMNT, Turtles in Time, yes! I bet this one is one that some of you expected to see here. Don't worry, I got you. Released in the arcades in 91 and the Super NES in 92, it was a sequel to the first Ninja Turtles arcade game, which had completely changed the beat-em-up genre as we know it. It was based on the original Ninja Turtles cartoon, and in terms of gameplay, It expanded upon the first game in pretty much every way possible. Up to 4 players take control of the 4 turtles and go through various levels. They beat up countless enemies, eating tons of pizza to replenish their health. Now, upon release, Turtles in Time was the most successful arcade cabinet Konami had ever released, and today, it's widely remembered as one of the best beat-em-ups ever made. The gameplay still holds up. The art style still holds up. This is a go. It's been ported to pretty much every platform over the years, and emulators also exist, or you can go get the mini cabinet arcade now. If you've never played it, go play it. How about SpongeBob? Battle for Bikini Bottom. Yeah, you probably expected this one too. Tons of SpongeBob games throughout the 2000s. A lot of them were terrible, but Battle for Bikini Bottom was actually loved. I mean, so much that it got a full-fledged remake last year, developed by Heavy Iron Studios. The Battle was a 3D platformer released for the Xbox, PS2, and GameCube. Now, the game itself isn't anything mind-blowing or super innovative, but it did have all the fundamentals that worked. The level design was good, the art style was good, and all the voice actors from the show returned to bring their characters to life in the game. That's super important if you ask me. Battle for Bikini Bottom received mediocre reviews from critics, but who cares? It was adored by gamers and became one of the best-selling Nickelodeon games of all time. This next one, we're going way back. I love this game. Ducktales. One of the most beloved Disney games of all time. A 2D platformer developed by Capcom and released for the NES in 1989. Then it was remade in 2013 for the PS3 and the 360. The game was based on a very popular TV show of the same name that I'm sure some of you remember. You played as Scrooge McDuck, traveling to various locations and trying to find treasure while interacting with characters from the show. Now, you can tell it's a Capcom game because this was back when they were on top of their game, at least in terms of 2D platformers. You've got level design, visuals, nostalgic soundtrack. It was one of the best TV show games ever made, if you ask me. If you never played it, the 2013 remake is solid. Go give it a try and tell me what you think. At number 2, South Park and the Stick of Truth. Released in 2014, it's one of those games that nobody expected to be good, but actually ended up being really good. Developed by Obsidian Entertainment, The Stick of Truth was an action RPG written by the same guys who wrote the South Park TV show. That's important. Obsidian did their best to recreate the show's art style and then mixed it with great writing of Matt Stone and Trey Parker, and they made it feel like you were truly playing through an episode of South Park. It got hit with a lot of censorship in multiple different countries, which added to the press even more. At the end of the day, The Stick of Truth is a fantastic action RPG and one of the funniest games ever made. It's definitely one of Obsidian's best games and certainly the best South Park game of all time. Although, to be fair, most South Park games aren't very good. And at number 1 today, I have to go with The Simpsons Hit and Run. This thing is 18 years old, came out for the GameCube, the PS2, and the Xbox, and it's often remembered as the best Simpsons game ever made because of how perfectly it captured the insanity of the show while also blatantly ripping off other games of the time. Let's not beat around the bush. The game is literally just Grand Theft Auto, The Simpsons. But does anybody care? No, it's fun. You drive around Springfield at completing objectives, but also causing destruction and mayhem wherever you go. Throughout the game, you earn coins to buy new outfits and vehicles, just like in GTA. It was met with decent reviews, had good sales, but as the years went on, its reputation grew. Today, it's widely regarded as the best Simpsons game ever made. So if you like GTA and you like The Simpsons, track down a copy of Hit and Run because you're going to get a ton of enjoyment out of it. If you ask me, it's not just the best Simpsons game, it's the best TV show game ever made. If you guys enjoyed the video, do me a favor, drop a like, make sure you're subscribed, turn on those notifications, and I'll see you soon.